Hello and welcome to episode number 3 of season number 3, Acker Basketball. I'm Curtis D. Acker.
I'm Mark Acker.
Thanks for joining us. We're so glad you're with us. We got a special guest, as you can see in the title. Head coach Kevin Carroll of the Lipscomb Bisons will be joining us towards the end of the episode. We're very much looking forward to bringing you that. We've been doing top 5 transfers in recently of commits that commit Sunday to Sunday, and this week we're going to do it a little bit differently, because this week was really hard, but just because of the uniqueness of the episode. And we're going to start off with the FGCU Eagles. So the Eagles added a couple players to their roster this week. Dad, who's our first player?
Right, 2 guards added this week. I'll talk about the first one is J.R. Konieczny. JR comes to Florida Gulf Coast as a 6'7" graduate student, a guard, even at 6'7", averaging 5.5 points, 3.3 rebounds per game in his career 71 games played at Notre Dame. JR, he's a fearless driver, guys. He'll drive into the paint. He scored at 48.6% rate once he got inside the arc. So they're really dangerous once he gets inside. What I see from JR, he's a lengthy guy, as I mentioned, really good ball handler. I think that's a good element to add to the Florida Gulf Coast team here. I don't know if you have, Curtis, anything to add with that, but he's just got that offensive firepower, what I see, and finish to his game.
Well, yeah, so he's coming over as kind of like a 6-man role for Notre Dame, which coming from the ACC now into the ASUN, very promising. After showing success in a Power 5 conference, now coming to Dunk City here in FGCU. What I like about him is his microwave score ability, but also his secondary ability of getting gritty and getting the rebounds. For me, that's huge because it speaks to all the little aspects of the game that likely made him the 6-man type of role that he had at Notre Dame. I believe he started 4 games this past year is what it was.
Great.
So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does here now coming over at FGCU. And this week, in my opinion, I want to get that out of here right out of the way, was dominated incoming-wise by these tall wings that can contribute in lots of areas.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely right. No, 100%. I think, and I see that in the game in general, versatility is so important, even on the mostly on the defensive end as you match up, switch and all that stuff. If you can't switch on the fly with all the screens that go on, you're in deep trouble. So yeah, players like this are hugely important to teams. In addition to what you had mentioned, for sure.
Yes. So let's move into the second player that they ended up pulling in. That would be 2023 Gatorade Ohio Basketball Player of the Year, George Washington III. He'll join his brother BB now at Florida Gulf Coast for his junior year. Experience with Michigan and Richmond. He did suffer a stress fracture in his left shin in early February. Missed the final 10 games with Richmond this past year. Shows some promise here now with a career 85% free throw percentage, but the shot really hasn't developed quite at this level yet. I have some theories for that, but Dad, first I want to get your take on Washington real quick.
Yeah, I think he's got the game, right? I think we saw a scenario his first year at Michigan where he didn't have an opportunity to get much playing time based on who was ahead of him. So hopefully learning from that, and then obviously last year being injury shortened for him, and that was in early February, so he missed the last 10 games of the season and wasn't able to kind of hit it as you're getting into the depth of the season.
Right.
So good chance to reset here and show the skills that he had in high school and all the way through coming up there to be able to turn that into some more minutes and more action for sure.
Right. He was Ohio Gatorade Basketball Player of the Year for a reason, and it was because this guy's got a bag. He just hasn't had the chance to display it yet at this level. He can score from everywhere on the floor. He can get up for some dunks that you wouldn't expect him to get up for. And he's got the ability to make plays for other people, create shifty feet in the ability to create lanes for himself and then dish it off to others in a crazy way. It was very impressive to watch his high school stats. As far as you had teased it a little bit, at Michigan, he had to deal, I believe, with Doug McDaniel for the first year that he was there. So he was never going to be an on-ball guard, and that disrupted him from being able to, I think, develop into the player that he was supposed to be. You also had Jalen Llewellyn on the team that year, so there was just a logjam at that position. And then he tried to get himself in a better spot, seemingly, with Richmond to get himself some more playing time. As you mentioned, had the injury-shortened season, and now we're at where we're at now with him, and I think he's going to be competing definitely for that starting point guard spot with Ramir Barno, who's been serviceable in that role, but hasn't quite secured that spot yet. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the competition there.
Yeah, you got to have good competition, absolutely. And hopefully they both can raise both of their levels up as a result of that.
Absolutely.
Yep. So let's now. So that's the two signings for Florida State, Florida Gulf Coast. This week. Now we're going to turn our attention over to the University of North Florida, who grabbed not 2 but 3 commits this week. And I'll start talking about number 1, another of our favorite types of players, or another hybrid type of player. And this is a graduate forward guard, Dalton Gayman, 6'7", turned 43.7% shooting last season, 36 from behind the arc, into 9 points per game. That's actually from 2 seasons at Division II Purdue Northwest. Dalton, another player that does it all, or did it all for Purdue Northwest. 6.4 rebounds per game, 1.2 assists per game. You watch him play, he's scrappy, he's physical, he gets inside, works real hard, and he'll step out and hit the 3 as well. So a lot to look forward to for his first season in the D1 program that I saw. Anyways, Curtis, what did you see when you looked at Dalton Gayman?
When I looked at Dalton Gayman, I saw exactly what you saw. I saw what surprised me was what I thought was a complete package. Like, this guy played incredibly well in the highlights that I saw for him, and in the game action I saw for him as well, because I want to watch a little bit of both each time I get to see these players, so that way I can get to learn a little bit about what they're really good at, and then I watch the game action and see, dissect maybe what they're shown highlights of, how often that actually happens in a game, or seeing maybe some things that weren't highlighted and maybe they're actually pretty good at those things, or they're lackluster in those things. And I didn't really see any flaws with his game. So I was very impressed with what I saw from Gayman, and I look forward to what he's going to end up doing here at UNF. I think it's a great addition to what they really do on offense, which is Driscoll. We know about the 3-ball, but the 3-ball, I think, is set up a little bit differently than some other, like, threes in other areas. It's just kind of like when you get the chance or when there's a wide open shot for it. Like, there is some run and gun offense from UNF, but at the same time, they also do a great job of moving the ball and making sure that the right person takes the 3. And for me, that speaks to Gayman's game completely.
One of the things I really liked about Dalton Gayman's game is his ability to run screen and rolls. His ability to create space and timing, both as the ball handler and as the screener, to open up triple threat opportunities for the play. They're fantastic, right? He'll pop out, he'll set if the defense sags, or if he'll take the second defender with him as well to create an opportunity for, if he's the screener, setting the screen. So he's really good at that. Looking forward to see how he turns that skill set into play for the Ospreys here.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Go ahead.
He's fantastic. Another strong addition for the Ospreys is Devin Hines, who comes to the Sunshine State, officially signed now on Tuesday after 4 seasons in the Patriot League with Lafayette. He averaged right around 10 points, 4 boards, and an assist a half per game in the past 2 seasons, not just 1 season, but he's done it consistently now for 2. And he brings some defensive intensity that doesn't come from everyone at UNF, so I think that is why it's so important for Driscoll to add a guy like Hines to this team. Obviously comes in with experience, so you expect some leadership qualities there for maybe the younger guys that are coming and joining the team. And yeah, I think Hines is another solid addition to a great week for North Florida here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and again, you mentioned it very well. I was going to keep amplifying it. I did it last season, all season long, talking about North Florida, how they struggled on the defensive end of the floor. So certainly great to see a player of Hines caliber and pedigree on the defensive end come in to see if they can help change some of that dynamic.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. And just real quick side note, I was making a bunch of weird faces while you were talking there. That's because I was fighting off a sneeze. So
Good job. Good fight. You worked through that one very well.
Hopefully it doesn't catch up to me a little bit later.
Well, let's move on. The third signing this week, and actually the first one of the week chronologically, but Kent Jackson. Kent Jackson going closer to the beach. Last season played at Crosstown, Jacksonville. This season going to North Florida. He's a shooter, right? 77 of his 89 shots taken last year were from outside the arc. Great job there. He scored one of his highlights, a season high 4 3-pointers made, 14 points in 19 minutes against Central Arkansas. So here you get more of a pure scorer, a spot shooter, right? Works off the ball and creates those openings for himself, sliding along the arc to drop them in. So another element, we know coach likes that aspect of offense. And here's a player that could help fill that void.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's a shooter, as you mentioned. I think you covered him real well. One thing I saw in his high school game that I didn't really get to see a whole lot of at Jacksonville was he created as well with it as the lead guard in high school, and he was able to create for others. And one thing that he does really well that not everyone else does is that when he drives for the ball, he might not get the credit on the board because he doesn't get the initial assist, the first hand assist, but he gets that hockey assist where he set up a really good pass to create what was overall a much better play. And for me, that was impressive from Jackson.
Exactly. Sophomore. So it's his sophomore season coming to here. We'll see as we second year in the league may help bring out some of those those characteristics you just talked about here as he moves across town. So anyways, let's move on. That's UNF for the week. Hopefully we'll see what more they have coming up, right? They had a lot of players leave. Let's see if they can bring some more players in.
Absolutely. So let's move into Stetson. Stetson adds a rebounding standout in Matar Diop. Yes, that is correct. Diop. He spent the last season with Loyola Marymount, got just over 2 rebounds per game in 9 minutes per contest. That's 10 rebounds per 40 minutes of play. For those of you that don't speak stats, I'll translate. That's a good number. 17 games played last year. Little fun fact for you. He speaks 4 different languages.
Hey, and for those of you who don't speak 4 languages, that's also a very good number.
Yes. So we didn't mention as well that he also played his freshman year in Nebraska as a true freshman. He was one of the key reserves as a big for them. So I didn't really get to see much of his Nebraska film. I did get to see some Loyola Marymount film, and this guy he's so hard to move out of the paint or move when he wants you to be locked down in the paint. It was very impressive how he's able to use his body to maneuver other players or himself to get into better positions. That's what I saw as a very big highlight here for Diop, and I'm looking forward to see how he adds to that as he, probably gets a little bit better of a chance to get some playing time here at Stetson now.
Right. The height's one thing. There's not a lot of 6'10" active players that are in the ASUN conference, so having that presence on its own brings an element that most teams do not have. So again, can he carve out the niche there and be that force on the defensive end? Looking forward to see how that plays out for sure. Yeah. And speaking of guys who are hard to move, we'll move on to one more player, last player that and this one is for Lipscomb, Cole Middleton. He is a 6'6" forward. He played center last year, or last 2 years at Division II Anderson University in South Carolina. Last season, averaged 14.6 points per game, 56.7% field goals, and 37% from behind the arc, 7.2 rebounds on top of all those other statistics as well. All those stats led him to be a third-team All-SAC member. And watching his film, Curtis, he again, he's a physical guy. He's a big guy, 6'6", really thick, hard, physical, athletic talent. I think a lot of what I saw, a lot of his action in game was off ball more as far as on the offensive end, but very physical, getting putbacks, and making athletics plays to get those points and to create a lot of disruption on the offensive end for his team.
I totally agree. Well, he's listed at 230, right? And so It totally makes sense that at 6'6", he's playing center. Every single game that I saw, I think it was 3 or 4 of them. He started off taking the jump, so he was the small ball center for Anderson. I think that's not going to be the case here at Lipscomb. You know, you already have Williams and Asman, Charlie Williams, Grant Asman, who are likely going to be able to handle the center job. Unless something happens with them. You know, obviously we don't want that to happen at all. But like something that happened with them, like Dylan Faulkner last year, where they unfortunately lost their starting center throughout the season. And so I think he's going to slide in and maybe contribute more like Ignacevic did. I don't know if he's necessarily going to have the same offensive punch, but I think he's going to definitely bully guys like Ignacevic did. Yes. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing out of Middleton.
Exactly right. And again, obviously with Lipscomb, we got a new head coach, a new program. Although I'm sure a lot of elements will match over since Coach Carroll played under Coach Acuff, or coached with Coach Acuff, for years. But yeah, we don't know really what their makeup's going to be in that regard. That's a little bit of the elements about what we see Cole Middleton bringing to the game, offensively. Defensively, again, he was playing out of his element in a role, so we're looking forward to see how he can make an adjustment to more of a wing type of player that we'll see, we think, this year.
Absolutely. And speaking of Lipscomb, we were very fortunate to spend some of our Sunday with head coach Kevin Carroll, and we were able to talk to him a little bit about his journey, his values, his story, and the future of Lipscomb basketball. And go get yourself a snack real quick. We'll put a little 30-second break right here, and then you can come on back and enjoy the interview. All right, welcome back to the Acker Basketball podcast. We got a special guest joining us now, and to introduce that guest, I would like to start with a quote that he had that was quite powerful during his opening press conference. God will put you in a current and tell you where he wants you to go and where he wants you to be, and that current now has him as the 20th head coach of Lipscomb men's basketball. Introducing head coach Kevin Carroll. Thank you for joining us today. We want to start off by just kind of getting you in the moment where you first got here to Lipscomb. We read online through Joey Dwyer, actually, shout out to Joey for always being a great source, but that you had met with the team pretty much right away, right when getting here, and shortly after, some of those guys like Charlie Williams, Miles White, even Grant Osmond ended up deciding not to go to Trevecca, where you were just at, and is ending up coming back here to Lipscomb. So what was that message when you first initially got here to the team?
Well, the first thing I tried to do was just, provide empathy for them. I told them that almost, in 1997, almost to the date, that Coach Acuff had come into my locker room and told me that he was leaving to take the job at Alabama Huntsville. So kind of ironic that I'm the one that's coming to the locker room and talking to them after Coach Jacob had just done that with them. So just trying to build some rapport there and help them understand I know where they're coming from, or how they feel. They just lost a great coach, great man, a great mentor for their life, and I wasn't coming to replace that, but rather try to be an extension of that in terms of what it would stand for, what the program would be about, and to help them understand that the more things change, that the more they would stay the same.
So, yeah, I remember you mentioning in your press conference, you talked about how wired a little bit different than Coach Acuff was, but same message. You're doing it for them. That's good to hear that, and obviously it inspired some of the guys to stay. So that's great.
Yeah, we have a great group of guys in the locker room. And I was there for 4 years as an assistant, prior to taking over at Trevecca, and the culture, the values, the type of young men that they've recruited there over the years, that's just been the exact same and direct step in alignment with what I've tried to do at Trevecca. So I think I've got to know, quite a few of those guys just in passing over the years, coming to practices, games, recruit, obviously a lot of the guys that I recruited and coached when I was there are graduating now, except for, maybe Charlie Williams and Grant Asman, people like that. But just trying to help them understand that, give them some comfort there and understanding what it's going to be about.
Nice. So, Coach, you had said that the standard going forward is to win conference championships. Beyond that, what top goals for the Lipscomb men's basketball program do you have in your inaugural season as head coach?
Yeah, I think, the standard is the standard at Lipscomb, and that's to be knocking on the door every year, for a conference championship. And that's no slight on any other program in this league. I mean, there are some phenomenal coaches and programs in the ASUN, and it's only gotten stronger, since I got there 6 years ago. But at the same time, we feel like we're resourced in a way that we should be having the opportunity to compete for championships. At the same time, the message and the goals are really much greater than what the scoreboard says or what the box score says. Our whole goal is really to impact these guys in a way that will set them forward so that they can go build an army of difference makers in the lives of others, and that ultimately one day they're going to have a full funerals because of the number of people that they impacted. So I think that mission, that culture, that vision is really probably my biggest goal in terms of, setting that up for this coming year. And it's just been my experience that if you can get that going and get guys living their life that way, that you'll probably win a lot of basketball games.
Absolutely. It's crazy how things align like that, once again, as you touched on in your opening press conference. And in that opening press conference, you emphasized that Lipscomb's about more than just basketball. It's that entire Lipscomb experience. How do you plan on incorporating that philosophy into your recruiting and player development?
Yeah, kind of like what I just said, there's a lot of good players out there, just thinking about a lot of the schools that we tend to recruit against, and going head to head on recruiting battles. I don't know if we outshine a lot of people. I just think that we just have to have great messaging in terms of what it's about here and what's a fit and what we're a fit for. And ultimately just finding people who are attracted to that mission. And, Lipscomb's just a place that it's the highest level, but it's a higher calling. And we're just looking to, find the right kind of guys for us who are a fit for that calling, but just so happen to be really good basketball players.
You mentioned you're talking about finding guys for that fit. We're gonna get into a question here about that after, but kind of when the before, as you talked about your notebook that you had when you came to Lipscomb camp, and you picked up a lot of traits and a lot of qualities that now you're teaching. What are those qualities that you see that lead to success as young men and women grow into collegiate athletes?
Yeah, like you referenced, I went to Lipscomb's camps when I was younger, and I found one of the notebooks. When he went to camp there, Coach Don Meyer, who was a legendary coach, who at the time of his passing was college basketball's all-time winningest coach. But it was less of a camp about basketball and more of a camp about life. and I learned a lot that every lesson on the court is a lesson in life. And so a lot of those things, just to help shape me in terms of what I value. I value, honesty and vulnerability because that leads to trust, which allows you to build a relationship with someone. And once you have a relationship, you can hold people accountable. Um, I learned the value of just having hunger and drive. If you're hungry, then you're going to be committed to something, and if you commit to something, you're going to develop. And if you develop, once you develop, you're going to start experiencing success. And and just the value of humility. When you're humble, that's going to allow you to be selfless. And once you're selfless, then you're in a position to serve people. And once you have an entire locker room of people serving each other, you have this unbelievable level of connectivity and unity. So a lot of those things, maybe they weren't worded that way or messaged that way at that camp, but it's just they're things that, little phrases that were said that kind of led to a philosophy of living life in a way that kind of mirrors those things.
Right, nice. So, as Curtis mentioned, what about after your men leave the program, whenever that is there anything you add to what you just had stated about what you'd like them to walk away with when they leave Lipscomb?
Yeah, honestly, it's just systematic approach. Like I said, being honest, hungry, and humble that we feel like prepares you to, create accountability, create success, and create unity. And we just kind of have, over 25 years of coaching, I've kind of created this model of how to, build teams and what values you instill in teams and how, more importantly, how you live your life. And I just feel like that prepares you, like I said earlier, to go be able to impact a multitude of people. And that's really what we focus on more than what ball screen coverage to use or what player development system plan to incorporate or what recruiting tactics to put into place. It's more just about, hey, how can we ensure that we're teaching our guys to live life in a certain way so that's going to ensure that they have a life of significance, and a lot of times I think a lot of us, we're wired to, try to create a life of success for ourselves. But, I think we're just more invested in trying to create a life of significance.
Absolutely. It's all about the people that you impact. And I remember, once again, you touching on that in your press conference, and speaks a lot about your character. One part of your character that you've mentioned, or not your character, but character that you hope people walk away with, is humbleness. And someone as humble as yourself, what you've displayed, probably is tired of hearing this, but for people at home, I want to, if they've never maybe gotten introduced to you or gotten to see what you've done in the past, I want to say that when you left Trevecca, Director of Athletics Mark Elliott said, truthfully, I wish we could clone him for our next head coach. And that's obviously huge praise. While leading that program at Trevecca, what lessons did you learn that built that successful program there and you're excited to bring back to you now at Lipscomb?
Yeah, there's so much to be learned from there. I think every situation is different. It has their unique challenges. I think one thing a lot of people probably said to me during the process there was just like, hey, I don't know if I would take that job because they haven't had a lot of success, there in a long, long time. And that's not really a great opportunity for you to kind of build your coaching, path or whatnot. And, I think probably the biggest thing I learned is just, it's not your resources that are going to dictate your direction and your path nearly as much as it is the decisions that you make. And I felt like we were fortunate. We made some good decisions. We tried to keep the main thing in terms of what a program that I run values, and luckily that was in great alignment and with Trevecca. And the great thing about Lipscomb and why I felt like, while I'm not sure any other Division I AD in the country would hire me, I felt like this was a great fit because it has a similar mission and a similar vision for what's important.
That's funny. Oh, I'm sure you'd get plenty of calls other places, but that's awesome to hear. And it seems like you found a really good fit for yourself here at Lipscomb, obviously being familiar with the program.
Yeah, no, honestly, this is the job for me. This is my dream job. It's a faith-based institution. We have loved living in Nashville. I've lived all over the country in my coaching career, in some great places, but this has been our favorite. It's about 2 hours away from where I grew up, so it's as much of a homecoming as I'm probably ever going to get. And it really was the job that I felt like was the best fit for me.
Very cool. It's turning to more of a basketball type of question. So last season under Coach Acuff, the team leaned really heavily on four core players and logged a lot of minutes. Those four players did. What's your vision from a team depth perspective for this upcoming season as you break in?
Yeah, I think that can look a lot of different ways based on, how many players you feel comfortable with to play, heavy minutes. There were years at Lipscomb we played 10 guys, or 11 guys. There were years we played 7, and that really has a lot more to do with the roster and that we are able to build and the guys' ability to catch on to what we do, So, at Trevecca this past year, I had 2 potential All-American candidates, 2 guys that averaged over 20 points a game and shot over 40% from 3 and were extremely efficient. And it was hard at times to take them off the floor not because the other guys weren't good. It's just, hey, I had 2 of the best players in Division II on the same team. There's a lot of different factors I think that go into that. I mean, ideally, you're going to need at least 8, 5 starters, a guard, a wing forward sub and a center sub. But, I think that really has a lot more to do with just how many guys are deserving of minutes.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. And so lastly, we just touched on basketball. We want to get into the faith part because you've been huge and you talk about it all the time, your faith. How has this game of basketball provided you opportunities to share and live out the Word of God?
Yeah, the great thing is when you're, a coach, you've got a platform to provide your message, and I'll be honest, I loved being a Division II basketball coach. I did it for 9 years as a head coach. That level is great because it can probably be a little bit more of who you are, at this level. There's different challenges. The game's different even than 2 years ago when I was here. In terms of how strongly the portal is utilized and NIL and just all these different things now that we're just kind of getting into place when I left. But at the same time, like I said earlier, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I think here you just have the opportunity not only to coach at the highest level, but you're able to have maybe a greater impact and a greater audience so that if you have success, people will maybe hear a message that maybe they haven't heard before. And that's why it's important to be good. We talk about all the time about, your message is only as powerful as your product. If we go out there and we drop down to winning 8 games next year, no matter how great our messaging is and no matter how much I've learned just in my journey through where Christ has led me, that's probably not going to fall on a lot more deaf ears as opposed to, hey, if we're having a chance to play in front of 30 billion people on TV in the NCAA tournament. So I think it's, and that's one thing we emphasize, just why it's important to win and why it's important to be successful is just so that it gives us a greater platform to spread a bigger message.
Absolutely. I remember you talking about getting Nashville excited every year to hopefully be in that conversation in March every single year, and we look forward to seeing you build that program to accomplish that. Head coach Kevin Carroll, everyone. We were both very impressed with Coach Carroll. We hope you are left impressed after the time that you got to spend with him just now as well. And that's going to do it for this episode of Acker Basketball. Thanks for staying with us. Before you go, we're going to put a link to Lipscomb actually right down here. You can go check out their website, go check out what they got going on down there, and we look forward to seeing you next time.